Hello, fellow angel. Whether you are straight, gay, bi, asexual, whatever, everything about you is valid, but we live in a world where everybody for some reason wants to control that aspect of you. And there's reasons society wants to control it, there's reasons religions want to control it, there's reasons abusers want to control it. Not that those things are always mutually exclusive. And I just thought it'd be interesting to dive into this topic from a couple of angles you're probably not used to hearing it from. So first things first, we all know that there's damage done by religious dogma about desire. And what we really need to remember is that desire is not a sin, it's a compass. And that is a big difference between spirituality and religion. Desire in religion is seen as a bad thing, something that makes you dirty, unless it's contained within a legal framework, aka marriage. And the problem with this is it demonizes not only desire in itself, but it disconnects us from our own bodies, our intuition, and our power. And if you think about it logically for a second, it makes no sense, even in religious dogma, because if the God that created everything did it because he desired a connection with his beings, his people, then wouldn't desire inherently be a good thing? We would be mirroring our creator, right? The truth is, desire is fuel for the soul. It's a very sacred thing, and it's not something that should be suppressed but interpreted. And it's important to interpret your sexuality properly, because if you don't, as you'll see as we go deeper, if you allow other people to interpret your sexuality, your sexual desires and preferences, then you end up finding yourself oftentimes being a victim of sorts. Religious frameworks teach people to fear their own bodies, especially women, queer people, and anyone that's outside of these kind of heteronormative scripts. And the real life impact of that, as we know, is shame, repression, but also disembodiment. Now, I am not one to promote promiscuity, so please let me be clear. I do not recommend sleeping around. I did not get into that, just because I never thought it was safe to do that. But I do recommend that you let love, not religion, be the guide to whether or not you share your body and with who, because we've heard of those horrible situations where women do get married only to essentially find themselves being raped in their marriage. There's no such thing as sacred rape. So we have to be careful about the scripts that we accept, It's not about whether or not you wear someone's last name. It's about whether or not there's mutual love and respect between the two of you that you both want to express on a physical level. Because if one or both of you are not ready for that physical embodiment of love, then that experience should not be had. It does not matter if you're married or not. I've sadly heard married women, even on the internet, talking about just doing whatever their husbands want to do in bed because they feel like that's their duty. And I am not saying that every once in a while in a relationship, whether you're married or not, that you shouldn't just give your partner what they want to make them feel good. Maybe once or twice a year, yeah, that's fine. But that shouldn't be a habit, because sex really is the highest form of love and connection that two or more human beings can share. And so in order for it to be had in a safe manner, everybody should be equally enthusiastic about it. So I think that instead of thinking about sex from a religious standpoint, you should think about it from this standpoint and ask yourself, what would it look like if I honored my desires as sacred rather than sinful? And really let that sink in. If you were to treat your desires as windows to your soul and not as sins and dirty things that are happening in your mind or in your body, but instead as a beautiful manifestation of the creativity that lives throughout you. What then would your perception of your sexuality be like? Hello, fellow angel. So this is part 2, or maybe episode 2, and what I really want to focus on is the question, is this sex positivity or just repackaged trauma? And in this episode, we're going to talk more about social and societal representations or misrepresentations of human sexuality and how we can take our power back. So when you're watching things, right, I want you to ask yourself a question. Is this sex positivity or just repackaged trauma? So this is not me promoting the idea of performative virtue where you freak out and go, oh my gosh, everything is just so sexual now because there's nothing inherently wrong with sex, or weaving sex into art or literature or anything because it's an inherent part of us. However, it's how sex is used in art and media that can really be problematic. For instance, a lot of things that are labeled sex positive are oftentimes really just harm in disguise. And I want to talk about how our culture normalizes violent and disconnected sexual language and behaviors in the name of freedom. So I first began to question what was quote-unquote normal when a certain big movie came out. It gave rise to all of these quote-unquote sex coaches that promote dungeons and things like that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here to shame anybody for what they're genuinely into, but that's the question, is are people genuinely into degradation and pain, or do they feel like they're supposed to be into it because it's been popularized? When I first heard the idea of a safety word, I knew that we had gone too far, because sex should inherently be safe. If you have to tell someone that you are no longer feeling safe during the most sacred act that you two or more people can do together, then it's probably not being carried out in a very safe manner. And it's not about kink shaming. I feel like the same way that religious people will try to shame you for having a sexuality, the kink culture will also try to shame you if you don't just normalize and go along with degradation. All of this shame from any angle, as well as pushing the idea that what one group thinks is normal should be normalized, is the real reason that people are confused about sexuality and what they're supposed to want. And that leads to people being very performative and ultimately unsatisfied. The question becomes, are we safe and are we seen during the most sacred act that we could be doing? I truly believe that the real reason that a lot of people perform such perverted acts, and when I'm talking about perverted acts, I'm talking about inappropriate role plays that mimic illegal activities and things like that. I think that all of that exists because deep down they're trying so hard to perform their comfort with their sexuality, but deep down they're still so ashamed of it that the only way that it can come out is deviance, which feeds back into the loop of sex being an inherent shameful thing, and it's not. So if we were to get back to sex for what it really is, which is connection and mutual pleasure giving, then we can get rid of the shame. The concept of empowerment has been hijacked. And when we are watching these things, what we really need to be asking ourselves is, who is benefiting from what we call liberation? True freedom is about feeling safe and sovereign, not numb and performative. So here's what I want you to ask yourself the next time you're about to have sex. What does healthy sexual expression feel like to me in my body and in my energy? Because we must not forget that sex is an energy exchange, so you need to be very, very cautious about who you share your sacred energy with and make sure that they are safe and sane. But more importantly, you need to know what it is that you truly desire. So, what does healthy sexual expression feel like to you in your body and within your energy? I hope this has been helpful. I'd love to hear your comments. Please like and subscribe. And if nobody sold you today, you are loved.